What does it mean to be human? Well, you can answer that question biologically. That would be easy. But generally speaking, that would be an explanation unsatisfying to most. When most people ask themselves and others that question, they're looking to find out as much about themselves as they are about our species as a whole. This is likely why literature, art, music, and film, which aims to answer this question, seems to be so important to us, and why it's become increasingly important to us from the 19th century onward. That was the period when questions like these became necessary, when the traditional answers given to us by our historical cultures stopped cutting it for some people. The most famous fruit hanging from this existential branch, maybe even one which predates the issue in the first place, is Mary Shelley's literary classic, Frankenstein. Frankenstein, a story about a human being who can create life, has raised this question so well that it's become the cornerstone for stories like this ever since. Whether we're talking about Metropolis, Blade Runner, or Toy Story, questions of what it means to be a living being and what it would mean to be able to confront our creator have been common ever since. Most of these works focus on the tragedy of living, on the fact that we're born into this world without asking for it, often born with a hand we would feel guilty dealing to others. We're tasked with doing things necessary to survive, and then doing even more things necessary to be happy. And even then, happiness is no guarantee. In these works, the created characters suffer what we as typical humanity suffer, but suffer it in a more acute fashion, one which thrusts the tragedy and absurdity of our own lives before us, forcing us to confront the reality of what it means to be alive in the first place. The movie that I want to examine this time, though, one which is relatively recent as of this video's recording, is Yorgos Lanthimos' modern classic Poor Things. Taking this Frankenstein model quite explicitly, the film uses it for a much more optimistic purpose. Fundamentally, it's a movie about identity and identity formation. Bella Baxter is our Frankenstein monster, but unlike the typical tale where the monster is horrifying in appearance, Bella is beautiful. She inherited her looks from her mother like we all do, but in this case, it's quite literal, as her childlike brain has been artificially implanted within her mother's body, almost as a way of giving both mother and daughter a second chance at life. Bella goes through the standard stages of development, but she does so with two caveats. 1. She does it all in an extremely short period of time. 2. She goes through every stage in the body of a young woman. Both these factors help the film's themes by eschewing the usual physical milestones that we as humans have to go through on our own way to adulthood. This makes the film entirely about psychology. Biology is obviously a factor here, but only insofar as the mind works in conjunction with our body, both influencing it and being influenced by it. Bella, by being a child in the body of an adult, is in a position to examine the adult world without having the capacity for understanding it. Because of this, and because we partially see the world through her eyes, we share in appreciating the novelty of life itself. Her creator, Godwin Baxter, serves as an interesting mad scientist, as unlike Dr. Frankenstein, who created his monster for the pursuit of science, or Tyrell in Blade Runner, who creates replicants for commercial ends, Godwin here has quote-unquote created Bella as a way to save her from death. After creating her, he sits aside and observes her, requiring little from her except her own safety. He is her god, and is even cleverly referred to as such using the abbreviation of his own name, but he's a god who is not only verbally there for her, but is also passive and unambitious with his creation, allowing her her own room to grow as a person, and always being there to answer any question she has, even if he's a little bit late to answering the most important questions. Unlike the Frankenstein monster, which suffers from the loneliness that comes with being repulsive to others, Bella is beautiful and agreeable to be around. Unlike the replicants who fear their soon coming deaths, Bella is likely to live a long life, one not shorter than any of our own. The Frankenstein monster comes to his creator, begging for companionship to ease his own existential pain. The replicants to theirs, begging for a longer life. In both cases, these demands can't be accounted for. It's the lack of answers, the lack of resolution to some of mankind's deepest desires which make these stories so tragic. In the case of Bella Baxter, there is no fundamental tragedy. Even the tragedy of being orphaned is softened by the fact that she technically is her own mother. The movie has all the existential trappings of the tropes it's associated with, but very little of their melancholy, as the setbacks in the film, rather than being devastating, are informative in character building. The movie doesn't hold back in its radical social politics, often daring to cross over into uncomfortable territory. The benefit of it being willing to do this is that it contains no sleight of hand. There is no shell game here presenting us with ostensibly easy answers, only to stand aside and watch as we're thrust into Tartarus by the strength of our actions' consequences. The movie tells us up front that actions have consequences, and that mistakes sometimes leave irreparable scars. It's a call to action, but one lacking romantic cliches and rose-tinted glasses, even if the set design and cinematography is almost dollhouse-esque and idealized. The dialogue is cartoonishly on the nose. Some might consider this as an example of the film being thematically shallow and obvious, but the movie's satirical tone, in my opinion, is actually aided by its storybook simplicity. The bad guys here advertise themselves as such, the good guys do the same. Bella is flawed, often callous when she should be empathetic, or sensitive when she should be stoic, but this is the point. We're flawed. We're often maladjusted to our environments and our current circumstance. We grow out of one maladjustment only to develop another. Bella makes decisions, benefits or suffers from them, and then continues making further decisions. Her choices, rather than being right or wrong, are just simply her own. They ebb and flow, gain and lose as time moves forward, but they're always hers. The majesty in the film is suggesting that that's enough. Enough for what? Wasn't there a point to this video? There was. The question was, what does it mean to be human? Through Bella Baxter, perhaps even more than through the Frankenstein monster Roy Batty or Buzz Lightyear, that question takes on strange and beautiful form. She is us, and the color in her world is the color in our own. Perhaps we should look around and appreciate it a little more often.